The 1912 Summer Olympics, officially known as the Games of the Fifth Olympiad, were an international multi-sport event held in Stockholm, Sweden, between the 5th of May and the 22nd of July 1912. 28 nations and 2,408 competitors, including 48 women, competed in 102 events in 14 sports. With the exception of tennis and football and shooting, the Games were held within a month, with an official opening on the 6th of July. It was the last Olympics to issue solid gold medals and, with Japan's debut, the first time an Asian nation participated. Stockholm was the only bid for the Games, and was selected in 1909. The Games were the first to have art competitions, women's diving, women's swimming, and the first to feature both the decathlon and the new pentathlon, both won by Jim Thorpe. Electric timing was introduced in athletics, while the host country disallowed boxing. Figure skating was rejected by the organizers because they wanted to promote the Nordic Games. United States won the most gold medals, while Sweden won the most medals overall. Host selection. Following the 1908 Summer Olympics in London, the authorities in Sweden immediately sought to ensure that the next Games would be held there. There were two Swedish members of the International Olympic Committee at the time, Victor Bork and Clarence von Rosen. The pair proposed to the Swedish governing bodies of athletics and gymnastics in order to ensure that they backed any potential bid. Support was given by the national associations on the 18th of April 1909 for a bid to host the Olympics in Stockholm on the basis that suitable financial arrangements could be made. King Gustav V was petitioned on the 6th of May 1909 following the publication of preliminary plans for the Stockholm bid that the expected cost of hosting the Games would be 415,000 kroner. The government accepted the petition on behalf of the king and supported the bid. On the 28th of May, at the meeting of the IOC in Berlin, the Swedish representatives declared that they had full financial support for hosting the next Games in Stockholm. A deal was made with the German IOC representative on the basis that Berlin would host the 1916 Summer Olympics. Pierre de Coubertin spoke at the meeting about his concerns that Sweden should ensure that the Games take place, as he did not want a repeat of the problems with Italy hosting the 1908 Games. He also expressed a desire that the Games must be kept more purely athletic, they must be more dignified, more discreet, more in accordance with classic and artistic requirements, more intimate, and, above all, less expensive. The Games were duly awarded to Sweden to host in Stockholm as the only nominated host city for the 1912 Summer Olympics. Organization. The news that Stockholm was to host the 1912 Olympics was received with enthusiasm by the Swedish public. The organizing committee took de Coubertin's words to heart, and aimed to achieve an Olympic Games which removed those elements which detracted from earlier Games. The committee was elected in the autumn of 1909, with Bork voted as the president of the committee, and Crown Prince Gustav Adolf selected as honorary president. The committee's first meeting took place on the 7th of October, and on the 11th of October they delegated the arrangements for the individual branches of sport to the relevant governing bodies in Sweden. There were 4 exceptions to this, with the game shooting, modern pentathlon and mountain ascents retained by the Olympic Committee, and the horse riding competitions being organized by Prince Carl, Duke of Östergötland, who was the inspector of the Swedish cavalry. Altogether there were 187 members of these committees. The official invitation to compete in the Games was issued on the 18th of November 1910 to 27 countries, either directly or through their representative on the IOC. A further 15 countries were to have been invited, but as they had no IOC representatives, the Swedish authorities were unsure how to proceed. Once the organizing committee for the Games received confirmation of the athletic associations in each of the 15 countries, they too were sent invitations. Some 61,800 entry forms were printed for the use of the various nations. Free transport was arranged for the invited nations' equipment, and a discount of 50% was arranged for competitors and delegates on the state-run railway. A daily newspaper, which only covered the Olympics, was arranged to be published during the Games, in both English and Swedish. Further arrangements were made for the general arrival of visitors in order to entertain them whilst they were not at the Games. A pleasure garden was opened north of the Olympic Stadium, and a series of indoor tennis courts were converted into a restaurant venues. In the initial bid document it was identified that a new stadium would be needed, initially envisaged as being located in the Östermalm athletic grounds. In order to save funds, it was expected that only one of the stadium's stands would be permanent, with the other three made of wood and dismantled following the Games. The cost of that stadium was estimated at 235,000 kroner. Arrangements were made with the individual national committees to provide the use of Östermalm athletic grounds and Traneberg. It was decided to host the cycling road race around Mälaren, the third largest lake in Sweden, while it was decided that the water events, including the swimming and the rowing, could be held at Djurgårdsbrunnsviken. A stadium would need to be erected. Kaknäs was already used as a shooting range, but alterations were needed to accommodate shooting events, although it was not used as the Olympic Stadium as originally intended. Östermalm hosted the lawn tennis and fencing competitions after a tennis pavilion was moved there from another location. 5 other locations were considered in addition to the Östermalm athletic grounds to locate the Olympic Stadium. It was decided to build the Stockholm Olympic Stadium on the site of the former Stockholm Athletic Grounds in order to retain the other locations for other users during the Games. By placing it to the north of the city, the Olympic Stadium was within the immediate vicinity of other pre-existing sporting venues. Initial funding was given to the sum of 400,000 kr for a timber stadium, but Torben Groot, the architect, also drew up alternative plans for a stone stadium. Following discussions with the Swedish Central Association for the Application of Athletics, it was decided that the stone version should be built, and further funds were made available through a national lottery once guarantees were made that no further funding was to be asked for in order to build the stadium. However, it was found that the original estimate for the stone stadium would still be too expensive, and the plans were once more modified in order to simplify the design and reduce costs. An agreement was entered into with a contractor on the 2nd of November 1910 that it would be transferred complete by the 25th of May 1912. Opening ceremony. The Games of the Fifth Olympiad were opened on the 6th of July 1912. The Swedish royal family left Stockholm Palace at 10:40 a.m. and were received at the Olympic Stadium by members of the IOC. 3,000 competing athletes had already assembled in the nearby Östermalm athletic grounds, and began to enter the stadium in alphabetical order by nation according to the Swedish spelling. The Swedish team entered last, but unlike the later tradition, the Greek team did not enter first. A hymn was sung, a traditional Swedish chant was conducted, and prayers were read first in Swedish and then in English. Crown Prince Gustaf Adolf addressed the king on behalf of the Swedish Olympic Association. King Gustaf V then declared the Games officially open. Afterwards a trumpet fanfare was played and the Crown Prince called for cheers for the king. The athletes in their national groups marching out of the stadium in order ended the ceremony. It is with legitimate joy and pride that we Swedes see athletes from every part of the world gathered here with us. It is a great honor for Sweden that Stockholm has been chosen as the scene of the Fifth Olympiad, and I bid all of you, athletes and friends of athletics, a most hearty welcome to this friendly contest of the nations. May the grand thought that found expression in the Olympic Games in classic times be so held in honor by our age too. that these competitions may become a powerful means to promote the physical health and development of every people. With these words, I herewith declare the Olympic Games of Stockholm opened.